Hello and welcome to the Center for Spiritually Integrated Arts, a Centers for Spiritual Living teaching center. I am Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson. I am the founder and the spiritual director. Now, as you are sitting there joining us, you may have questions, any number of questions, such as, who am I? How did I get here? Spiritually integrated arts means what exactly? What is a teaching center? Well, what is Centers for Spiritual Living? What is that? What does that even mean? Or New Thought, or religious science, or science of mind and spirit? You may have any number of questions about this specific community, about the parent organization, CSL, our philosophy, our teaching, our liberation theology. Any number of questions. Feel free to send an email. We look forward to connecting more and building our virtual community, our global community. And if you haven't connected yet on social media, feel free to do so. This is your invitation now. Also, did you know that all of our Sunday messages are archived on our YouTube channel? You can watch it anytime. Now, questions about anything, such as becoming a member. What does that mean? What does membership entail? And if you live somewhere far and already belong to a spiritual community, can you be a member of more than one? The simple answer is yes, you can. Just like you can shop at more than one grocery store, you can attend or be a member of more than one gym. We are building beloved community. So you can do both. You can be a member of both. You can be involved with both. That's what being in spiritual community means. So we welcome you. We invite you. We are so appreciative that you have found this community and that you have joined us today. We bless you. We love you. We welcome you. Live long and prosper. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of our Sunday message. Love you. Connect with you soon. Blessings. Namaste and greetings. Here we are. No, it's almost, it's almost, it's almost 2024. Wow, we're getting close. It's beginning to look a lot like, yeah, wow, we're already there. Anyhow, today, our third week of exploring this sticking the landing. Today, we're going to talk about flowing ground. We think of our world as solid, but Dr. Holmes reminds us that we are dealing with a fluent or fluid force. We can learn to flow with liquid law and are not to be stopped by the appearances of solidity. It takes a shift of consciousness and a grounding in truth principles to look solid facts in the eye and say, you are not so real after all. Just as we have come to understand that thoughts are things, we also become aware that the things are thoughts in form. This is why we say, change the thoughts, change the things. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that momentarily. Flowing ground, fluent or fluid law. What does it mean to you to be in the flow? What does it mean to flow at all? To be in the divine flow of spirit. What does it mean? What does that look like? Because as we talked about last week or the week before, it's easy to be in our heads and think. How do we bring that down into our heart and feel? So, what does it mean to feel the flow and then to enact it in our lives? Dr. Holmes says, in dealing with this subtle power of mind and spirit, we are dealing with a fluent force. It is forever taking form and forever deserting the form which it has taken. One form yields to the new form, yields to the new form, yields to the new. One breath is left, is deserted in order for another breath to take its place. One word, as I say the word, it goes into the silence. It is deserted so that another word can take its place. So that another word can take its place. And in that, a sentence is now formed, and that sentence is deserted for another sentence to be formed, for a paragraph to be formed, only to be deserted for yet another to be formed. Fluent, fluid, the flow. Speaking of the flow, good old Shifu Bruce Lee said, you must be shapeless, formless, like water. If you pour water into a cup, it becomes the cup. If you pour it into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. If you pour it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. See, water can drip or water can crash. Be water, my friend. Now, we could swap out this idea of water and turn it into, spirit. You must be shapeless, formless, like spirit. See, when you put spirit into a flower, it becomes the flower. When you put it into a person, it becomes the person. When you put it into a building, it becomes the building. See, spirit can be small or spirit can be mighty. Be spirit, my friend. How are we invited to allow spirit to take the shape of this thing called our lives? What form are we taking so that the formlessness of love can embody that form, can embody the shape of a life well lived? Dr. Holmes goes on to say, a practitioner of this science should not be confused over any given form, but should know that any form which is not of the original harmony is subject to change. See, the formless doesn't change. Spirit doesn't change. Spirit is spirit. But as it moves and interweaves with, the experience of it changes. How love shows up from here to here to here changes. How water shows up here and here and here changes. Solid, liquid, gas. But H2O, the essence of what water is unchanging. So, how do we, as practitioners of this science, not get confused by the form and recognize that the formlessness of the divine is ever in harmony and changing and shifting as it shows up in? So, that which is unchanging shows up in the form of that which is ever changing. Ooh, talk about being in the flow. So the infinite and allness that God is, that is showing up as me, doesn't change. It is eternal, it is infinite, ever and ever. And yet, in this form, this finite form does change. I didn't pop out of my mother's womb like this. I was about yay big when I popped out, roughly. And then that birth turned into, oh, it's my 5th birthday. Oh, I'm 15. Oh, I'm 35. Oh, I'm in college. The finite changes, even though the infinite doesn't. Talk about duality. But once again, as a practitioner of this science, how do we not get confused by the form? You see, when you look at this image, what do you see? I almost feel like singing that song from, what was it, Sesame Street? One of these things doesn't belong here, but they all belong. They all belong. But what do you see? It's a variety of bottles, but what's in them? You know, what did Master Bruce say? It takes the form of. So there could be anything in these bottles, but whatever is in it is going to take the form of the bottle. And it's easy for us to look at the bottles and have a certain affinity towards. Like I remember growing up watching I Dream of Jeannie. So for me, that bottle that's on the far side, Jeannie's bottle, has a certain affinity, nostalgia, right? My involvement in the martial arts makes me connect to the Buddha bottle or the Chinese gourd. Like I have a certain affinity. But if I get caught up in the form, then I might forget what is the function. Right? If I get caught up in the form, then I may also get caught up in everything else that comes with the form. The bottle falls and breaks. I might lose my mind. That was an heirloom. There was only one like it. And while, yes, feel the emotions of that used to belong to my great grandmother, now it's broken, it was stolen, it's gone. Yes, you feel the grief. But what happens when you feel the grief and you let the grief move rather than being bound to and addicted to the form? Because oftentimes that's exactly what we do. We get caught up in what the form is. We get addicted to the form. We get confused by the form. And our invitation is, how do we ensure that we're not? How do we ensure that we are clear of mind, heart, and soul so that we are no longer confused? Dr. Holmes says, if we seek to combat evil, we
if we seek to combat evil, if we seek to combat, do you mind if I change something for a second? Because that word is, if we seek to combat evil, we should be careful. I don't want to do combat, so I'm going to take that out altogether. I'm going to put something else in its place. If we seek to eradicate evil, we should be careful that we do not make the evil real. Okay. If we seek to heal evil, we should be careful that we do not make the evil real. There is a place in the mind which intuitively knows that good overcomes evil. Good is the healing power. Good eradicates evil. And there is a place which knows there is no evil to overcome in the absolute. Our argument then is between the experience of evil and a solid conviction that good is the only reality. Now, let's make this practical and applicable. The evil of war. It's an experience. Many people experience it. They're experiencing it right now as we speak. But what are we convicted of? That good, that which is God, is the only truth, the only capital R reality. And in knowing that, then we are able to find the medicine, the solution, the healing properties which cause war to be eradicated. It causes war to be healed, and then the dis-ease that is war is no longer present. But it's because we understand what health, divine love, divine peace, we understand what it is as the only true reality, the only ultimate reality. And because we understand that, because we have a solid conviction to that, we are then able to do the process of, now, how do I heal this disease so that that truth, that reality is the experience? So we want to end racism. How do we eradicate? How do we heal? Sexism. How do we eradicate? How do we heal? Homomisia. How do we eradicate? How do we heal? War. Corruption in politics. How do we eradicate? How do we heal? By being and having a solid conviction of the ultimate and absolute good that is God in expression in, through, and as each and every one of us. How do we do that? How do we live that? That's the practice. Emerson reminds us, there are no fixtures in nature. There's no crying in bass. Oh, that's Tom Hanks. There are no fixtures in nature. The universe is fluid and volatile. We're going to get to that in a second. Permanence is but a word of degrees. Our world, seen by God, is a transparent law, not a mass of facts. The law dissolves the fact and holds it fluid. You got that? Now, normally when we see that word volatile, because the way we typically use it in our culture today, it means explosive and unsafe and, whatever that is. But in Emerson's era, that word carries a very different meaning, which he sort of alludes to here. Transparent law, dissolves, it is fluid. So this word volatile, as he is using it, means something that has a tendency to evaporate. It is elastic. It is ephemeral. It is not permanent. It is not static. So as we are moving and thinking about this practice of this spiritual teaching, Let us not become addicted to the form as a static, concretized thing, but rather see it as vaporous and ever changing, as are we in this form, while also being that which is unchanging. When you see this, what I'm going to ask you, give me one word for what you see. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So I'm hearing everybody saying that what you see is a caterpillar. That's what you see. What you don't see is what the caterpillar turns into. You don't see that. But what if you did? What if you could see it and not be confused by the form, but have a vaporous understanding of both and? It is caterpillar and butterfly at the same time. We are infinite and finite at the same time. What if? Buckminster Fuller says, there is nothing in a caterpillar that tells you it's going to be a butterfly, right? We see it, and what we see is caterpillar. It is what it is. That's it. You're a 57-year-old black man. It is what it is. That's what I see. I see the police uniform and the badge, and that's what I see. Police officer. And because I am bound and convicted to that form, I also see police corruption. I also see, and I also see, and I also see. Versus, well, what happens when you dissolve the form and see the effervescence through the form? You can see the form, but you also see through the form and see both and. Caterpillar and beyond just the form. So I'm able to see the uniform, but I'm also able to see human wearing uniform. And I'm also able to see God individualizing itself as human wearing uniform, which is made of God, but wearing uniform. Now, do I relate more to the uniform, the form, uniform, because I'm confused by the uniform? Or do I connect with the individual and the truth of who and what they are? Even though they may be expressing as racist, they may be expressing as sexist, I understand that, and we will address that accordingly. But if I get caught up in, you are a racist, you are a sexist, that is a brick, then I am solidifying it. I am making it one and the same, and that's all it is. Once a racist, always a racist. Once an abuser, always an abuser, period. Well, where is the space for forgiveness, transformation, alchemy, healing? Where is the space for that? If once a, always a, then there is no rehabilitation. That's not even possible then. So I don't get caught up in the form. I relate to it as I need to relate to it, but I am also able to see beyond it. Because in this grand scheme of this whole butterfly thing, as Philip J. Bradbury says, there is a moment in the process where the creature is neither a caterpillar nor a butterfly, the liminal space in between. The transforming creature can feel in that moment that all is lost. But we know better. How often do we avoid this relinquish the form? Because to relinquish the form puts us in the liminal space where we feel all is lost. We feel vulnerable. So rather than feeling vulnerable, I'm going to get solid on the form. I am not going to relinquish my baggage as it relates to the form. I am addicted to the form, and I do not seek to not be addicted. Because the moment I surrender the addiction, there's, well, then who am I without my addiction? What do I do without my addiction? Where do I go without my addiction? The liminal space, the in between. We don't like that space. We don't like feeling lost. We don't like not knowing. So it's easier to obsess and become addicted to the form of whatever it is, but to the form. And yet, as Philip Bradbury reminds us, but we know better. So when we, as it said way back when, several slides, change your thinking, change your life. It's not quite how the slide said it, but it's a paraphrase of the same thing. Because we do say this. When you change your thinking, you change your life. Yes, but and. Because there's more to it. Changing my thinking without also changing my emotions and my actions cannot and will not effectively change my life. I need to change the entirety of my mental equivalent or equivalence, not just the thinking. Because I can sit here and think about, so starting the new year, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to eat whatever, I'm going to, I go through my list of my resolutions and my whatever. I'm clear. I've changed my thinking about this. Yep, it's all changed. I changed my thinking. But I'm doing the same stuff. Why am I doing the same stuff? Because I'm feeling the same stuff in some way, shape, or form. And so it's not changing my actions. So change our thinking. Well, what did we talk about last week? Change my feelings, because that's the fire that drives. Change my feelings to change the thoughts, to change the words, to change the actions. Let's put things in their proper order if we actually want to evolve and shift and change. Now, speaking of which, this is a passage from Dr. Holmes from his famous Sermon by the Sea. And oftentimes people will quote this in a way that encourages metaphysical malpractice or spiritual bypass. Because he says, find me one person who is for something and against nothing. So I can't be against war. I should be for peace. Yes, ultimately, yes. But what he is ultimately inviting us into is, don't become so enamored by and addicted to the form of what you are against that the energy of what you are against outweighs the energy of what you are for. Find me one person who is for something and against nothing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of the burden of their soul, and I will find another Savior, another Jesus, and an exalted human being. Find me one person who is not addicted to the form to such a degree that their energy is about fighting the form, but their energy is for healing. Their energy is for love and evolution, that is truly what they are convicted of and by. That though they may speak of this, their energy and their conviction is that. So, for example, the war on drugs, which then became the war against the drug addict, which then became legislation, et cetera, that criminalized those who are addicted to drugs rather than addressing the problem itself. So find me one person who is for healing people of their addictions, who is for the divine right action of people living their highest and best, rather than someone who is so focused on fighting drug addiction and fighting drugs that they are now in a war on drugs, a war on poverty. That is where their energy is going. That is where the attention is. Find me someone who has shifted that consciousness to health, wholeness, and well-being. They address the drug addict. They address the addiction. They address the mental distress. They address all of that for the purposes of helping the individual move from addiction to liberation, from dis-ease to health and well-being, to freedom. Find me that person, and what we will find is someone else who has now elevated their lives to the degree and the healing stature that Jesus held, because that person will have become an exalted human being, because they are now walking the walk and talking the talk of liberating the world. Find me that person. Well, that person is you. That person is me. That person is we when we choose to live in alignment with that, in harmony with that, in the flow of that. Is that easy? Doesn't matter if it is or isn't. Ultimately, is it what you want? Because if it's what you want, then whether it's easy or not, becoming a master of martial arts isn't easy. But if it's what you want, you are willing to go through 100 push-ups if that's what it takes. So it's not about if it's easy or if it's hard or if it's challenging. It's about, do you desire? Remember, magic is desire made real. Do you desire it enough to make it real? Margaret Mead says, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed individuals can change the world. In fact, that's the only thing that ever truly has. Are we a group of thoughtful, committed, determined, convicted individuals who know that the world can be changed, manifesting a world that works for all? Do we know this? Is that a description of us? If not, why not? And if so, how so? What is the evidence? Breathe. When we think of flow, there are all kinds of ways that we can see it and spot it. Whether it's in martial arts, whether it's in dance, surfing, doesn't matter where it is. All of this is a demonstration of flow. And when each of these individuals stops doing what they're doing, the young woman stops stirring and cooking and she's done. Does she not flow from one process? Cooking and preparing food flows into serving food or eating food. Her body is still in flow as the food flows, moves from her mouth to her stomach through the process of digestion and then elimination. Is all of this not a demonstration of flow, even when we're not doing this particular thing that makes us think of flow more readily? Because once again, we get caught up by the form. See, it's easy to look here and see, oh, this is flow. Bob Ross painting, he's in flow, he's in the zone. But what about when Bob is not painting? Can he still be in the flow? What about when Jaden, or I forget his character's name in the movie, Chowdre, when he's not doing kung fu, is that not the point of the Karate Kid, both versions? That karate Kung Fu is life. It's not just the blocks and kicks that you do, it's how you put on a jacket or take the jacket off, how you pick the jacket up. Kung Fu is everything. Spirit is everything. How we do one thing can become how we do everything. Waiting for the train, standing in line, drinking coffee, doesn't matter what we are doing. We are the infinite doing it. Can we still be in the flow, even simply while sitting? See, it's easy to see the flow when we're caught up in form and, oh, Tai Chi, that's the form. They're in flow, but now they're simply sitting. Are they not still potentially in a flow state? How can we begin to dissolve the idea that one thing is flow and this other thing isn't? Going to the bathroom, that's not flow. No, yes, it is. Because ideally, you want the waste to flow through you and be eliminated as effortlessly as possible. So your body is still demonstrating flow. So why not allow your emotions and your mind to also see that as spiritual practice and flow with it? Just saying. As we said last week, as a metaphysical liberation theology, science of mind and spirit offers us the means to navigate and flow through the various forms of our lived experiences, through the various forms our lived experiences take. So let's explore ways that we can not only free ourselves from precedent and the forms of what was, but let our liberation be so powerful that we but to be can't help but to free the world from its domesticated, hypnotized states of addiction to the prisons of conformity. Let our freedom be Harriet Tubman. Let our freedom and liberation, our emancipation, be so powerful that it shows up as the Underground Railroad that frees others. Let our liberation from racism, sexism, dis-ease, disenfranchisement, etc., be so powerful that it becomes the very path and practice that others are able to then embody and engage in, so that they then also experience liberation and freedom from war. So war is no more. It's no longer even a thing to be held in consciousness. There is only peace. So we liberate them into peace, not simply liberating them from war, but liberating them to feel and experience peace, liberating them to feel and experience health, liberating them and freeing them to experience love and support, liberating them into, not just from, liberating them into a world that works for all. Breathe. This week's affirmation, our declaration, I will say it first. If it resonates with you, then say it with me on the second go round. I swim in the flow of consciousness, sowing good wherever I go. Together. I swim in the flow of consciousness, sowing good wherever I go. And so it is. This week's journal questions, if you do it as a private practice or the questions for the Thursday night study group, what are some of the best ways that you can make a difference? And where are you making a difference? What is a good that you can name and claim for your own life? And what is a good that you can name and claim for the world? What would your life look like if you were in the flow more often, if that was more like your default setting? And what can you do that will help you be in the flow, be aware of the flow more often? And lastly, what are some forms that you tend to get caught up in? And what old beliefs about those forms are you invited to release to shift the ground of your life? Look like it's going to be a nice discussion this coming Thursday. If you don't already know how to join in, send an email and the link for the Thursday night group can be sent to you. Now, let us enter into the atmosphere of prayer, the atmosphere of being committed to and convicted of the truth of our being. That love is, the divine is, the universe is, God is. And what it is, I am. And that truth about me is the truth for all of us. What it is, each person is, because it is all there is. There is no way that we could be something other than it. Every truth that is true about the universe is true about each and every one of us. The infinite wisdom of the universe is our wisdom. The infinite power and presence of the universe is our power and presence. The infinite intelligence and creativity of the universe itself must also be ours. There is only what it is, because what we are is it individualizing. Not a part of us, not a piece of us, but all of what we are is it expressing. So the groundedness of our being, the solid ground upon which we stand, is the groundedness of knowing who and what we are and living from that space, springing forth from that space, being open at the top and the bottom from that space, that grounded awareness, the truth of our being. Being willing to be vulnerable, to know the truth, to set ourselves free, and to allow that freedom to liberate others. So we move into that space of creating a world that truly works for all. And we do so by flowing and freeing and feeling God right where we are. Flowing as God, feeling as God, being free as God. And the experience changes. The law says yes. And knowing that that divine yes means it's already done, we together collectively, individually, we simply say with conviction, I know it is so, and so it is. Namaste, blessings, much love and appreciation. And today is our last day for the month of December to meet over in Zoom, so feel free to join us.